So I'm ÁRPÁD BESZÉDES. I did this with my colleagues from the University of Szeged, so it's like a completely university research. However, in cooperation and with regard to industrial, let's say, aspects. So the topic are software testing conferences. So what we did is, and we analyzed altogether 101 conferences, which is quite a lot. So this is composed of 33 academic ones and 63 academic ones and 38 industrial ones. So I am attending testing conferences, I don't know, since maybe 16, 17 years, and due to my research, because one of my basic topics in research is software quality in general and software testing as well. So I have seen quite many different types of conference formats, workshops, symposia, tutorials, you name it, and also from general conferences like conferences software maintenance, software engineering, things like that, which usually have some kind of a testing track. And also dedicated conferences dedicated to testing. And about several years ago, I started to attend conferences like HUSTEF and similar, which I would say are a completely different world, and because they belong to like what we call an industrial one. In some conferences they call it like practitioners. So why we did this actually? Because if you take a look at the different formats, like academic and industrial conferences, the differences are quite big in terms of the motivation of the people attending these conferences. I don't know how many of you in the room come from academia or have any kind of relationship with academia. Maybe, yeah, okay, 2 people just, and I guess there is only a third one in the whole conference who I know is from academia. So all the other people are from industry. So I'm going to try to explain you the main motivation for people going to these kinds of academic conferences. So one of the biggest, I would say, needs of a researcher and the practical obligations due to his or her work is to disseminate the work, research results, in form of whatever kinds of papers, including presentations at conferences. So a writing paper and being accepted, having an accepted paper at a conference is one of the basic motivations to go to these kinds of conferences. Of course, we do networking. We try to generate collaboration with other researchers and also with industrial representatives to generate either funded projects or R&D projects directly between the academia and the industry. And which might be similar. So also in the industrial conferences, we have, of course, networking. We try to do some kind of, like a business cooperation possibilities. And maybe, to find some particular solution, like a tool or method presented by some other practitioners. And of course, education. So as you can see, there are quite many differences here. So what we wanted to do are 4 different objectives. First one is to have I would say, a relatively comprehensive list of conferences. So the whole database is available publicly. I can send it to you, and also available through my website. Just type in my name in Google, and the first hit is my professional website. So the paper accompanying this research It's a 10-page paper, is also downloadable, and also there is an Excel sheet including all of the conferences. So what we wanted to do is to do let's say, a reasonably comprehensive list, because I cannot say that there are no other conferences in the world, of course. But if we as researchers were not able to find a conference on testing topic, probably it's not that important, and the other attendee would not find it either. So I think this list is, at least at the time of performing the research, which is about 1 year ago, this list is complete. There might be changes happened in the meantime. Then we did analysis of these events. Analysis based on publicly available information from the website and the related material. We did not actually contacted the organizers nor the attendees of these conferences, maybe except from 1 or 2 cases. Well, we set up like an analysis a methodology. We performed the same thing for all of these conferences, and wrote this paper and put the data into this publicly available database. So the one of the main goals with the analysis was not just to have like this list of conferences. It's so not that interesting by its own, but we wanted to find that is there any kind of synergy between these two words? In other words, to what extent an academic conference is trying to involve industrial presence in form of specific tracks, presentations, maybe as part of organization team, and vice versa. So how common is that an industrial conference like the HUSTEF involves people from academia? So we set up like a measurement method for that, and I will show you some results of the analysis. And finally, what came out from this whole research is a set of, I would say, recommendations for both attendees and organizers of academic industrial conferences. So generally, while I was talking to different people, also from academic world and also industrial world, there is some level of interest, I would say that way, or at least curiosity of what is happening from on the other side. There is, so people from industry often like to say that, okay, academics are just, performing some very high-level, non-interesting research, which will never become into production, into industrial, and to a certain extent it is true, but that's the point of whole research, regardless of IT and computer science and all other areas. So you have an idea, you perform some research, and maybe 1% of the results is transferred into actual daily use. I think this is perfectly fine. I mean, if all of the research results would go into production, there will be something wrong there. On the other hand, people from academia, when they look at industrial conferences, they see, okay, that those people are talking about the same things from the end time, which is very boring to them. Oh, again, selenium automation. Oh, again, agile issues and people problems or whatever. So not that interesting from, I would say, a theoretical point of view, which is also fine. But on the other hand, I think it's also an important question if the researchers are doing the right research. Are they trying to solve the right problems which the people at companies, working companies in industry are facing? And also the other side of the coin is, are the practitioners aware of any recent research results that they might be using in their daily work? if these two crowds are not really aware of each other, not attending, at least occasionally, events from the other side, that they will never know. So people like you who are from industry, do you know any kind of recent results from research? Probably not. And the latency is quite long from a research result to go into production. But I'm sure that technologies that you are using nowadays, like, I don't know, I would say like TDD or code coverage measurement or static analysis, just to name few, all came from academia. They were once all heavy topics and still are in academic research. So there are some research how we did this analysis. Maybe that's not that interesting, that important. Well, we did not do any kind of sophisticated mining or research, just using search engines with some keywords. And of course, we used some general sources. In the academia. There are large organizations like ACM or IEEE, which are the main sponsors of many of these academic conferences. And from the industrial part, of course, we took a look at ISTQB sponsored conferences and so on. So as mentioned, we did not include general conferences, but we included different kinds of venues, not only so-called conferences, but workshops, symposia, and so here comes some of the main results, the main properties. So from academic conferences, so one of the main differences are that in the case of this kind of conference, you get the so-called proceedings. Always, you get always proceedings, which includes the papers, research papers. A full paper is about a 10-page paper, but there are other formats like short papers and different kinds. This kind of outcome of an industrial conference is very rare. It is not impossible to find those venues, but I would say from these 38 conferences, there are only maybe 2 or 3 conferences when there are actually papers written. Because it's at the HUSTEF also, people who presented HUSTEF only submitted a short abstract, and the selection was made on based on the abstract and the CV. Of course, academic conferences supported typically by non-profit organizations. There is, of course, the budget and sponsorships and things like that, but the main goal is not to make profit. On the other hand, many industrial conferences' main goal is to make profit. They may be, communicate different things, that, okay, we want to, advance the testing profession and things like that, but the bottom line is that these conferences are also like a capitalist type of venues, which is also good. There is a mainly support from industry. And following that, if it needs to have a very serious marketing, sales activity, these kinds of things. Now, the other difference, and I'm going to talk about it in this summary as well, is that academic conferences typically are typically more transparent in terms of the organization. So if you take a look at the website of any academic conferences, you can typically find the past events back to 10, 20 years, and you can find out who were the organizers, what were the tracks, what was the selection criteria, and so on. In the case of industrial conferences, it's very hard, at least from publicly available information, to find out these kinds of details. Interesting detail is, for example, the size of the organizing committees, which includes different kinds of chairs, general, financial, program, things like that. Academic conferences tend to be a little bit bigger in that respect, so the rows are a little bit more separated. On average, we have nearly 3 organizers. In the case of industrial conferences, this is a little bit more than one. So typically, or not typical, but in many cases, there is only one person behind an industrial conference. I don't know if it's good or bad, but that's the situation. And a similar situation is regarding the program committee size, which is also not surprising because in the case of academic conference, you need to have a very serious program. There are lots of submissions of, as I said, 10-page papers, so typically there are more members in the program committee. On average, we found out there are 24 people. In the case of industrial conference, only 7 people on average deciding on the program. Another interesting thing is the number of keynote presentations. So an academic conference, the main goal of the academic conference is to present the latest results of the researchers. And a role of the keynote is just to make the conference a little bit more interesting. It is typically only on the opening day, the first talk, maybe 2 keynotes, but probably that's it. And in the case of industrial conferences, in many cases, one of the main selling points are the keynotes themselves. So these conferences invite famous people, well-known people in the various domains, and it is not rare that there are 3, 4, 5, 6 different keynotes, and compared, which is very a high number compared to the number of actual, I would say, submitted types of talks. Different analysis is what we did is the ratio of foreign members. I would say foreign members. So the question was how much in the case of academic conferences, how much industrial people are taking part in the organization, and vice versa. So this chart shows, I don't know if it's readable. So this one shows that in the case of academic conferences, we have a bigger ratio of having an industrial chair, not that much than in the opposed case. Which is, I think, good. So academic conferences try to involve a little bit more people from industry. The relationship is opposite for the program committee, but what is interesting for the keynote, the last column, the keynote, but it's not readable. So in the case of academic conferences, those are trying to involve industrial people as keynotes because they are able to make like a balance between the academic results and industrial ones, which I find is a little bit sad not to see too much academic people involved as keynotes in the industrial conferences. It is, you can see that the ratio is very low, maybe 1 in 20 conferences. I think should be improved a little bit. So since I'm running out of time, I don't want to go into the detail into this, I would say, this deeper analysis of synergies. But essentially what we did is that we assigned one factor, one number for each of the conferences, which shows the level of synergy. If you are interested in the details, I can tell it to you, it's in the paper. And the final result was that we were able to make like a rank on both of the academic conferences and industrial conferences according to this index, this synergy index. So this chart shows the most synergetic conferences from academic ones. I don't know if you know any of these. Probably, yeah. So maybe one of the biggest ones is the ASQT organized in Vienna last year, and from the industrial part, you can see, of course, HUSTEF, not of course, but yeah, this was an objective evaluation, and UCAT, and also some. Maybe you are aware of these events, but and there is also a different chart. This one. which shows which shows, probably it's not really readable, but this is a scatter plot of all of the so not all of the conferences, because it would not be readable. Where you can see the blue dots represent academic conferences, and the green ones are industrial conferences. So this is the age of the conference, so quite old, quite established. Maybe E3 is the biggest one, the academic world. Maybe you know these conferences, Equinite, Dutch Testing Days. And the other axis is the size of the conference, measured by the size of the PC members. It's maybe not the perfect measurement, but and the size of the dot represents the level of synergy. So the conference SVQD is really good in that. There is a reason for that. For example, they have a separate track, academic track, which is dedicated to research, and this is not that common in the case of industrial conferences. It is much more common in the case of academic conferences to have an industry track with separate program committee and so on. So yeah, so I think that's mostly it. In these slides, I summarized some of these like takeaway messages. One of the main observations was that the academic conferences are really trying to involve industry, and it is increasing. I skipped over this slide, but don't worry too much about the numbers. So it means that it is increasing, this industrial trend is increasing. And not in the case of industrial conferences, which is not that good, I think. And some messages from practitioners, which are you. Please try to attend some of these academic conferences. There are a lot of really good ones. There are many different dedicated tracks to industry. Just if you're curious to see what are the latest research results, and also to present your industrial problems. And on the other hand, some advices for the industrial conferences. I'm talking to researchers, so Zoltan, yeah. So there is one or two conference, industrial one, when we can submit papers and actually get peer-reviewed papers published in lecture notes or whatever journal. And as for the organizers of industrial conferences, it would be really nice to see a little bit more transparency. So how the whole selection process is going on. The composition of organizers and these other things.